Every year, 1.2 million people die on the roads, the biggest killer of young people. I thank my honourable friend for bringing this to the House's attention. The UK, through the Department of Health, contributes £12.5 million to the Global Road Safety Facility and is represented on its Partnership Council. And we continue to work in this space on this truly important issue.
Final question, Vicky Slade.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, the BBC reported the death of Palestinian child Jad Jadala, shot in a West Bank refugee camp while Israeli soldiers watched him bleed to death. Violence against children around the world is increasing, including Ukraine, Sudan and now Iran. So what diplomatic action is she taking to prevent child death and protect surviving children from the lifelong trauma of war?
Mr. Speaker, we've spoken many times about the risks to children in the West Bank and Gaza. It is a priority for this government. We raise it regularly with our Israeli counterparts, and I'm familiar with the report she references.
We now come to the spring forecast. I call the Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Mr. Speaker, this government has the right economic plan for our country. A plan that is...
Order. Sorry. Look, both sides, if you're not interested, please, you don't have to stay in the chamber. I'm interested, my constituents are interested, and your constituents as well. Chancellor.
A plan that is even more important in a world that in the last few days has become yet more uncertain. With unfolding conflict in Iran and the Middle East, it is incumbent on me and on this government to chart a course through that uncertainty, to secure our economy against shocks and protect families from the turbulence that we see beyond our borders. I want to express my gratitude to members of our armed forces as they serve across the globe to protect our country. And I want to reassure this House that I am in regular contact with the Governor of the Bank of England, with my international counterparts and with key affected industries, including our maritime sector. And tomorrow I will meet with our North Sea industry leaders to discuss the implications that they face and work with them to manage this uncertain period. Mr. Speaker, in an increasingly dangerous world, I am proud to be the Chancellor that is delivering the biggest uplift in defence spending since the Cold War. With £650 million committed in January to upgrade our Typhoon fighter jets, a new Royal Navy frigate launched from Rosyth last week, and just yesterday, our £1 billion helicopter deal with Leonardo. I am in no doubt about Britain's ability to navigate the challenges we face. The plan that I have been driving forward since the election is the right one. Stability in our public finances, investment in our infrastructure, including our armed forces, and reform to Britain's economy. It is a plan to reshape our economy and break with the failed ideas of the past. Building growth are not just the contribution of a few people in a few places, but in every part of Britain, with a state that doesn't stand back, but that steps up, strengthening our trading relationships and our alliances, creating capacity in our economy through affordable housing, better transport and free childcare. An active and a strategic state, building growth and economic security in an uncertain world. Stability is the single most important precondition for economic growth. That is why we have committed to a single major fiscal event a year, limiting major policy changes to the budget and giving businesses and households the certainty that they need. Today, the new forecasts from the Office of Budget Responsibility show that our plan is the right one. Inflation is down. Borrowing is down. Living standards are up and the economy is growing. Mr. Speaker, this government has restored economic stability. The previous government allowed inflation to skyrocket to over 11%. They stoked interest rates to 15-year highs and delivered the first Parliament on record where people were poorer at the end than they were at the start of the Parliament. That is their record.
Well before the pandemic.
I recognise the impact that what the Conservatives did had on families. We promised change at the election, and I understand the responsibility on me to deliver that change. I know that the question that people will ask themselves at the next election is this: are me and my family better off? I am determined that the answer will be yes. The promise that we changed the change that we promised has already started. There have been 6 cuts in interest rates since the general election, the fastest pace in reduction in 17 years. And inflation has fallen. For businesses, that means lower capital costs and greater uncertainty. And for families, it means more money in their pockets to spend in local shops and on the high streets. Those interest rate cuts will save households over £1,300 per year on a typical new fixed-rate mortgage. And real wages have risen by more in the first 18 months of this Labour government than they did in the first 10 years of the Tory government. At the budget, I went further to deliver the change that people rightly demand. I extended the 5p cut in fuel duty for a further 5 months. I froze prescription charges for the 2nd year in a row. I froze rail fares for the first time in 30 years. And I am taking £150 off of energy bills from next month. In February, the Bank of England confirmed that inflation will fall faster because of the action that I took in the budget. And today, the Office for Budget Responsibility expects inflation to come down even faster than it forecast in the autumn. Mr. Speaker, in the current global context, with the risk that rising energy prices will put upward pressure on inflation, the action that I have taken is even more crucial. Keeping inflation low and stable is the best way to support family incomes and reduce pressures on the cost of living. But that's not all we've done. This Labour government has funded 30 hours of free childcare for working families. We are rolling out free breakfast clubs at primary schools. And we are set to achieve the biggest reduction in child poverty over a parliament since records began by reversing the shameful 2-child limit imposed by the party opposite. That is the moral choice for the children who will no longer go to school hungry, and for the women who will no longer have to suffer the grotesque indignity of the rape clause. And scrapping the 2-child limit is an enduring investment in our children and in our future, to realise the potential of young people whose otherwise potential would be wasted. The Tories have said that they would reinstate that destructive policy. And now Reform are saying exactly the same thing. 2 parties united in their intention to plunge nearly 500,000 children back into poverty at a single stroke. Mr. Speaker, if you import failed Tory politicians, you get failed Tory policies too. Labour and only Labour have the right economic plan for our country. Last year, we demonstrated the resilience of Britain's economy in the face of global headwinds, with the fastest growth of any G7 country in Europe. Today, the Office for Budget Responsibility has updated its growth forecasts, including reflecting lower net migration. Average growth across the forecast period is largely unchanged, while the OBR has adjusted the profile of GDP so that it grows slightly slower in 2026 and then faster in both 2027 and 2028. So GDP is forecast to grow by 1.1% in 2026 1.6% in both 2027 and 2028, and 1.5% in both 2029 and 2030. I've always said that growth is for a purpose, to make working people better off. And I can confirm that GDP per person is set to grow more than was expected in the autumn, with growth of 5.6% over the course of this Parliament. That compares to a fall in GDP per capita in the last Parliament. And by the next election, after accounting for inflation, people are forecast to be £1,000 better off per year. Oh, I didn't hear them that time. We promised change, Mr. Speaker, and we are delivering that change. The economy is growing, living standards are rising, and inflation has fallen. But I'm not satisfied yet with these forecasts. I know that the economy is not yet working for everyone, and that the deep economic scars left by the party opposite and their mates in reform are still blighting the lives of too many people. In today's forecasts, unemployment is set to peak later this year and then fall in every year of the forecast period, ending the forecast period at 4.1%, lower than it was at the start of the Parliament. But young people in particular are still suffering from the aftermath of years of Tory mismanagement. In the last 5 years of the previous government, the number of young people not in education, employment or training increased by 113,000. The number of inactive people reached record highs under their government. And over the last decade, apprenticeship starts by young people fell by 40%. This government will not leave an entire generation of young people behind. We are already taking action with additional investment to reform apprenticeships to prioritise young people. And through the £820 million Youth Guarantee, providing young people with employment support and a guaranteed job. And in the coming weeks, I will set out more reforms to undo the Tory legacy of neglect and give young people the support and the opportunity that they deserve. Mr. Speaker, in the face of global uncertainty, we beat the forecasts last year. In the year ahead, the choices that we are making gives me confidence that we will beat them again. And in the year ahead, more of the choices that we have already made will come into effect. Discounts on business energy costs, trade deals with India, the US and the EU, reforms to back our entrepreneurs, investment in our infrastructure, skills funding for further education and more planning reforms. Progress opposed by the Conservatives, opposed by Reform, opposed by the Liberal Democrats and opposed by the Green Party too. Because it is Labour and only Labour that has the right plan for our country. Our plan for growth is grounded in a profound rejection of the failed economic dogmas of the past. The trickle-down, trickle-out thinking that produced ever-diminishing returns for working people. I know that an economy cannot be working if it is delivering for only a few people in a few places. I know that it matters where things are made and who makes them. And I believe that the working people who keep our country moving deserve a fair day's pay for an honest day's work. Since the election, I've been making the big choices that will bring about the deep structural changes that our economy needs so that it works again for working people. The choices to take on vested interests and back the builders, not the blockers. The choice to increase public investment and protect our public finances with new fiscal rules. And the choice to give people in all parts of our country the opportunities that they deserve. By reforming the Treasury spending rules in the Green Book to unlock investment in all of our urban, rural and coastal communities. Mr. Speaker, those are the right choices for our country. for security, for stability and growth. Today's forecasts from the Office for Budget Responsibility show that they are starting to pay off. And I am clear-eyed about where the opportunities for the British economy lie in this Parliament and beyond. In my second May's lecture in 2 weeks' time, I will set out 3 major choices that will determine the course of our economy into the future. To go further in strengthening our global relationships, breaking down trade barriers and deepening alliances with our European partners for a more secured and connected economy. To go further in backing innovation and harnessing the power of AI, so that entrepreneurs and innovators thrive here in Britain and so that working people reap the rewards. And to go further in transforming our economic geography, so that we can build growth on a broad and stable basis, spreading opportunity and unlocking opportunity in every part of Britain. Mr. Speaker, I came into politics because I believed in a government that stands up for working people. That everyone, no matter where they grow up, deserves security and a fair chance to achieve their potential. And that being able to manage the bills, afford a home and pay for a holiday is never too much to ask. When governments lose control of the economy, as the Tories did, it is working people who pay the price. In their pay packets, in their bills and in their mortgages. That's what the party opposite inflicted on working people over 14 years. Austerity that cut off investment. Brexit, which cut us off from our closest trading partners. And Liz Truss's disastrous mini-budget. Cheered on by the Leader of the Opposition and by the Honourable Member for Clacton. Oh, he's not here today.
No, he's never here.
Mr. Speaker, 5 Prime Ministers, 7 Chancellors, 11 plans for growth, and at the end of it all, the only Parliament on record where living standards were worse at the end than they were at the start. And a £22 billion black hole in the public finances. That is their legacy. And make no mistake, the Tory Tribute Act up there, they would do exactly the same thing. They may have changed the colour of their rosettes, but the British people won't forget that they are the exact same people who wrecked our public services and wrecked our public finances in the Tory government. The same people, the same policies and the same disastrous outcomes for working people. The Tories left our country, our people and our allies exposed. They had no plan and no intention to fund their pledge to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence. And reform would go one step further by ditching our allies and siding with Russia. While the Green Party want to take us out of NATO and jeopardise our alliances. Well, she shakes her head. I don't know if they've changed their policy, but their policy is to take us out of NATO. So let me be clear. It is Labour and only Labour that can provide social justice, national security and fiscal responsibility. In their forecasts today, the Office for Budget Responsibility show that we are set to reduce borrowing by nearly £18 billion compared to the autumn. This year, we are set to borrow less than the G7 average, something that the Tories never achieved in any year in 14 years. The forecast today shows that public sector net borrowing is set to fall from 4.3% this year to 3.6% next year, then to 2.9%, 2.5% and to 1.8% in 2029-30. And even after funding other measures announced since the budget, including the new special educational needs system set out by my right honourable friend, the Education Secretary, last week, headroom against the stability rule in 2029-30 has increased from £21.7 billion to £23.6 billion, with headroom against the investment rule also higher at £27.1 billion. And debt is now set to be lower in every year of the forecast compared with the autumn. Mr. Speaker, it is because of the choices I have made to keep our public finances stable and restore our credibility that we can invest in the priorities of working people. Investment in our communities with pride in place. Investment in our schools to fix crumbling classrooms and give every child the education that they deserve. And investment in our NHS to bring waiting lists down and with a record cash settlement. I have never accepted that we have to choose between social justice and fiscal responsibility. Because there is nothing progressive, nothing Labour, about spending £100 billion a year. That's £1 in £10 of what government spends, just paying on the interest of the debt racked up by the party opposite. After their disastrous mini-budget, our debt interest rate soared towards the highest in the G7. And from my budget to this forecast, while average yields rose for the rest of the G7, yields on UK government debt fell. The Tories squandered Britain's credibility. My plan is rebuilding it. Already, because of the action that I have taken, we are expected to spend nearly £4 billion less on debt interest next year than was forecast in the autumn. And if we stay the course and stick to our plan, and our debt interests return to the G7 average, where they were before they wrecked things with Liz Truss's mini-budget, we will have £15 billion a year more for the priorities of working people and to make working people better off. That is the prize on offer. That is the prize within our grasp. This is the right plan. A plan that is more necessary than ever before in the world of uncertainty. A stronger and more secure economy. Inflation and interest rates falling. Resilient public finances. And in every part of Britain, working people better off. Mr. Speaker, every additional patient treated in an NHS hospital, every child lifted out of poverty, every breakfast club in every school is because of the choices that we have taken. And because I have the right plan for our country. But let this House be in no doubt. Every pound that we have invested, every pound in the pockets of working people, every pound that we have secured in this forecast today can be wiped out by a change of course. So we must reject a return to austerity, to protect our public services and invest in Britain's future. We must reject the temptation of easy answers and reckless borrowing, to protect family finances and get the cost of living down. And we must reject the political instability which would put at risk all the progress that we have made. My plan is the right one. I am in no doubt about how great the rewards can be if we stay the course. The forecasts today confirm that the choices this government have made are the right ones. Stability in our public finances, interest rates and inflation falling, living standards rising, more children lifted out of poverty, more appointments in our NHS, more investment in our infrastructure, a growing economy and more money in the pockets of working people. Mr. Speaker, these are the right choices, this is the right plan, and I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Chancellor Belstride.
Mr. Speaker, is that it? What utter complacency. A Chancellor in denial. She speaks of stability. What planet is the right honourable lady on? She has lurched from putting up taxes to destroying growth, to destroying headroom, to coming back to putting up more taxes, more growth destroyed. Round and round we go, like a fiscal twister ripping up everything in its path. And Mr. Speaker,
Sorry. I will hear the Shadow Chancellor, because people need to recognise there's two sides. Let's hear the other side now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. They just don't like the truth, Mr. Speaker. That's the truth of it. As our economy bleeds out, what does the Right Honourable Lady do? She comes to this House with nothing to say and with no plan. Unless, of course, doing nothing is a cunning plan to avoid those U-turns further down the line. She is weak, Mr. Speaker. She has even stripped the OBR of its ability to assess whether she is meeting her fiscal targets. So, Mr. Speaker, let it be remembered that at this time in this chamber, this weak and chaotic government gave up on the British people. She has nothing to say to us today. This is not a spring statement. This is not a spring statement, Mr. Speaker. It is...
Order. Mr. Gardner, I expect better. We have to listen to you on a Thursday night. I don't need to hear no. Melstride.
Yeah, they don't like it, Mr. Speaker. They don't like the truth. This is not a spring statement, Mr. Speaker. It is a surrender statement. Yes. The Chancellor... The Chancellor has the temerity to suggest that she is creating the conditions for renewed growth. She is rather like the dodgy estate agent standing in the crumbling building with the roof gone, the windows gone, with the floor gone, and saying, just think of the potential. But that potential, Mr. Speaker, has been undermined by the terrible state of our public finances. When it comes to the deficit, she knows, the Right Honourable Lady knows, when it comes to borrowing, that borrowing this year is almost double that which was forecast at the time of the general election. She knows that the forecasts are predicated on the numbers she has given to the OBR that they have to accept, including squeezing spending at the end of the Parliament, raising taxes, raising energy bills at the same time. We know, Mr. Speaker, we know that that is unrealistic. And the reason that we know it, Mr. Speaker, is that she and the Prime Minister have no backbone when it comes to taking difficult decisions. Before the budget, Mr. Speaker, winter fuel payment, U-turn. Welfare reform, U-turn. Two-child benefit cap, U-turn. And in the short period of time after the budget, Mr. Speaker, farm tax, U-turn. Family business tax, U-turn. Public houses, U-turn. And on the deficit, when she rises again, could she tell the House how she's going to fill that black hole of £6 billion around this end budget? And she mentions, quite rightly, the Iran war and the greater threats that our country faces. Could she explain in a moment how she is going to fund what we have been urging her to do, to go to 3% of GDP on defence by the end of this Parliament? How will she fund that?
Order. Seriously, we need to hear this. If you don't... I can help you if you don't want to.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. She mentions the cost of borrowing and says it is coming down. Does she not know that the cost of borrowing in this country has been the highest in the G7, higher even...
Somebody needs to switch the phone off. It is not acceptable.
Even higher than Greece. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, if debt were a government department, it would be the third largest spending department in Whitehall. Not money going on the people's priorities, but simply being flushed down the drain. She makes great store of the latest forecasts on debt, saying that it is coming down compared to the forecast back in the autumn. But if you strip away her dodgy definition of debt, it will be going up in just about every year of that forecast. Yet, Mr. Speaker, she has the audacity to praise her own performance. She points to growth, but does she not know that the Bank of England only last month downgraded growth for both this year and next year? She specifically, a moment ago, said that this government had beaten the forecast for growth from last year. The forecast at the beginning of last year was for 2% growth. The growth outcome at the end of last year was 1.3%, Mr. Speaker. By my mathematics, that is not an improvement. It should be a considerable concern to the entire House that the Right Honourable Lady clearly thinks that it is. She points to interest rates coming down, but does she not know that her ruinously inflationary policies have seen interest rates higher for longer, meaning more expensive mortgages for hundreds of thousands of people across our country? And unemployment, well, Mr. Speaker, she was slightly coy about unemployment because, of course, what we know is it now stands at a 5-year high. And under every single Labour government in history, unemployment has risen, and this government is no exception. On tax, the Right Honourable Lady is fond of saying that she is simply asking people to pay a little more tax. Well, I don't remember, Mr. Speaker, the taxman phoning me up and asking me if I'd awfully mind paying a little more tax. And what does it mean? What does it mean? It means workers struggling. It means employers laying off staff. It means tens of thousands of the most talented people in our country going to other places where they believe the opportunities are greater. That's what a little more tax means, Mr. Speaker. And what has that tax done? It has destroyed, damaged deeply entire sectors of our economy. Hospitality, almost 100,000 job losses since this government came to office, particularly impacting our youngest people. Youth unemployment, the highest in Europe, the first time for a quarter of a century. Young people, their dreams, their aspirations, their hopes, all those bright young faces smashed on the altar of her incompetence. What is her message to young people today? Her message today has been that her so-called plan is working. But what is the reality? Inflation up, borrowing up, spending up, tax up, welfare up, unemployment up. All of this, Mr. Speaker, speaks to the weakness and chaos of this government. Is it any wonder that her so-called plan is not working? We have amongst the highest energy costs in the world, and yet she doubles down on net zero. And given where we are, the first thing that the Right Honourable Lady should do is get rid of those taxes on North Sea oil and allow us to start exploiting those opportunities. We have a welfare bill that's spiralling ever upwards. But what does she do? She removes the two-child benefit cap. And we have taxes. And we have taxes heading to the highest level in our history because of her choices, destroying the futures of men, women and children right up and down our country. No contrition, no apology, no plan to do anything about it. But it does not have to be this way, Mr. Speaker. At our conference, we set out how we can control public spending. £47 billion worth of savings, especially on the welfare bill. Some £23 billion in savings. Because we are a party that believes in work rather than benefits. We are a party that will do something about it. We are the party of work. They are the party of Benefit Street. We will bring taxes down to kickstart the economy, abolish stamp duty, scrap business rates for businesses on our high streets, a £5,000 tax cut for our young people, a cheap power plan. We will fix student loans. We will invest in apprenticeship. And through our golden rule, Mr. Speaker, we will get on top of the deficit. And by doing that, we will grow the economy. That's our plan. What is her plan? The truth, Mr. Speaker, is that she has no plan, or as her Health Secretary said, there is no growth strategy at all. And even if she did have a plan, she would be too weak to deliver it. The psychodramas swirling around Number 10, the almost daily scandals visiting the door of the Prime Minister, the sight of our once person at the highest level within the diplomatic service being carted away in a car by the police, and backbenchers calling the shots. The Chancellor's credibility has gone. The Prime Minister's Chief of Staff has gone. His Cabinet Secretary has gone. But somehow the Chancellor hangs on. But through the chaotic fog, Mr. Speaker, the drums are drawing ever closer. The British people deserve so much better. So for the hard-working people in our country crushed by taxes, by those denied employment, by the farmers and the family business owners who have suffered in fear for too long, for every hollowed-out high street, for every young person robbed of their future, for every elderly person struggling to survive, for the generations yet to come, we say go.
Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Well, I know that the OBR. I know that the OBR didn't publish the forecast until I sat down, but I still think he could have done a little bit better than that. To be honest, I was hoping that the Leader of the Opposition was going to respond today, and after that performance, I expect she does too. Now, Mr. Speaker, don't worry, I've got more. Mr. Speaker, the Right Honourable Gentleman said that they set out their economic policy at their conference a few weeks ago. Well, they had 14 years to set out their economic policy, and it's because of their economic policy that they're now sitting on those benches. Now, Mr. Speaker, today's performance is yet another reminder of how irrelevant the Conservative Party now is. And I hate to break it to the Shadow Chancellor, but people stopped listening to them a long while ago. And you can see why. Because whether it is in office or in opposition, the Right Honourable Gentleman's Party and his leader have been wrong about the economy time and time again. They opposed economic responsibility and backed Liz Truss. Wrong. They opposed closer ties to Europe and backed Brexit. Wrong. They oppose cuts in child poverty and want to repeat austerity. Wrong values, wrong economics. They are just plain wrong. After last year's budget, his leader predicted with characteristic foresight that borrowing would increase every year. She was wrong. Borrowing is now coming down faster. Faster than under the Tories. Well, that's not difficult because it went up. Faster than forecast in the autumn, and faster than in any other G7 economy. Last year, the Leader of the Opposition told us that energy bills would rise. She was wrong. They're coming down by £117 next month. And she told us that there would be no more Tory defections to reform. How's that one going? Now, let me return to the substance of his remarks, although I've had to reduce this section somewhat. The Shadow Chancellor mentioned student loans, but he neglected to mention that he was in the party that tripled university tuition fees, rose thresholds and oversaw higher interest rates, which led to the problems we are in today. Now, on special educational needs, they left a system in utter crisis, as every parent, every child and every school will tell you. So we'll take no lessons from them. But in terms of where the money is coming from, it's sat out today in the documents. But of course, the Shadow Chancellor doesn't know that because he didn't even bother listening to my statement. Now, the Shadow Chancellor mentioned defence, but he neglected to mention that it was his government that left office without any plan to fund their pledge to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence. And it is this government, and with me as Chancellor, that we are delivering the biggest increase in defence spending since the Cold War. Now, the Shadow Chancellor mentioned a welfare bill, and on this one, I've got to say it is a little bit rich, because he neglected to mention that the welfare bill rose twice as fast in the last Parliament, and that he was Secretary of State for Work and Pensions. Mr. Speaker, they broke the welfare system, and it is this government that is fixing it. Now, the Shadow Chancellor mentioned youth unemployment. And as I said, there is more that needs to be done. After they increased the number of young people not in education, employment or trading by 113,000 and slashed the number of young people starting apprenticeships by 40%. So, Mr. Speaker, we'll take no lessons from the party opposites. They're the arsonists, not the fire brigade. And if they can't be honest about the mess they've made, no wonder they can't recognise that we are fixing it. Today's forecast shows that debt is down, borrowing is down, inflation is down, and interest rates are down from 5.25% where they left them to 3.75% today. And investment, living standards and growth, they are all up. Let me break it to him and to his leader. There's no blank page for the Tory party, no year zero. They gave us chaos and instability. Labour is fixing it. They gave us austerity. Labour is investing in Britain. They gave us 14 years of barely managed decline, and we are reversing it. Now, we know that if they ever get the chance, they'll do all of the same again. More chaos, more kids in poverty, more and deeper cuts. It would be terrifying if there was any prospect at all that they would ever win an election again. Now, the leader of the opposition can keep turning up every week, but it's a total waste of time. Their party is the past and not the future. And I don't know what is more pathetic. The culprits who jumped ship and joined Reform and its Russian mates, or the culprits who stayed in the Conservative Party and pretended that the last 14 years never happened. Either way, the choice is clear. Investment with Labour or austerity with the Conservatives. Stability with Labour or more chaos with the Conservatives. Wrong leader, wrong choices, wrong plan. Only Labour has the right plan for our economy and for our country.
Chair of the Select Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I have to say, the sound and fury from the opposite, the Shadow Chancellor, is extraordinary when it was his government that ran this country and citizens into chaos with the interest rate increases and inflation increases under the Truss mini-budget. I welcome today's forecast, partly, Mr. Speaker, because there's been so little speculation along the way, which I'm sure the Chancellor, the markets and the public and businesses welcome. That's the stability and confidence that we need to see. The Chancellor laid out her 3 choices to promote growth, and she will be appearing in front of the Select Committee next week, where we hope to probe her further. But in the meantime, can she tell us which of those 3 areas is she most excited about to grow the British economy?
Chancellor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I thank my honourable friend for that question? I think the biggest change that we can make is ensuring that growth takes place in all parts of our country, rather than just a few people in a few parts of Britain. And the changes to economic geography that we started by changing the Green Book to give every part of our country the fair chance to get the investment and opportunity that they deserve means that growth will benefit everybody, not just a small few.
Daisy Cooper, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The country is paying the price for 2 anti-growth Labour budgets. Growth has flatlined. Youth unemployment is up, and the cost of living crisis grinds on, pushing people and businesses to the brink. So we are pleading with the Chancellor. Please, for the sake of our country, put a laser-like focus on getting a better trade and defence deal with Europe so we can protect our country, get Britain growing again and end the cost of living crisis. The Chancellor says that she will be making an announcement about trade relationships in a couple of weeks, but this government is 18 months in already. The Chancellor could have used today's spring statement to announce the government's intention to negotiate a new UK-EU customs union to kickstart growth, cut red tape for business and build ties with our reliable allies in the face of Trump's chaos. Why didn't she? Mr. Speaker, the spring statement comes at a critical time for our national and economic security. OBR projections will soon be out of date. Trump's illegal actions in Iran this weekend will be felt in people's pockets right here in Britain, with the cost of fuel and food set to rise. The Chancellor could have used today's spring statement to scrap the fuel duty hike, which is due this September. Why didn't she? Mr. Speaker, young people are angry and fed up. The next generation of young people could always expect that they would have a better life than the generation before. But that promise for today's young people has been ripped away. Almost 1 million young people, the highest in more than 10 years, are now unemployed. We are facing a youth unemployment crisis. Mr. Speaker, the Chancellor's youth guarantee is simply a sticking plaster for the damage that has been done by the jobs tax. The Chancellor could have used today's spring statement to reverse the jobs tax changes that have undermined job opportunities for young people and part-time workers. Why didn't she? Mr. Speaker, graduates are being ripped off. They've studied hard. Mr. Speaker, graduates are being ripped off.
Yes, that's right. She's right.
They have studied hard. They have studied hard. They have done everything they were told to do. But they are facing eye-watering repayment costs and they are struggling to get on in life. Mr. Speaker, on this issue, it is a plague on all our houses. Partisan point scoring does no favours to those young people. We have set out what we would do. The Chancellor could have used today's spring statement to end the repayment threshold freeze, putting £100 back in graduates' pockets in the first year, rising to £210 in the third. Why didn't she?
Yeah, absolutely right.
And Mr. Speaker, with great instability and conflict around the world and a move away from the rules-based system to great power politics, we must look urgently at building our national energy, defence and food security. And in so doing, we can and must turn the necessity of building national resilience into strategic opportunities for economic growth. We welcome the fact that the government has done a deal for helicopters with Leonardo as a result of the calls from these Liberal Democrat benches, especially honourable members from the South West who have raised this issue week in, week out. But the Chancellor could have used today's spring statement to launch a new defence bonds programme as part of a plan to spend 3% of GDP on defence by 2030. Why didn't she? And, Mr. Speaker, finally, to come full circle, as I said, the country has paid the price for 2 anti-growth Labour budgets, and the OBR today is clear. The downgrade in 2026 in growth is bigger than the upgrade in the next 2 years combined. We have got to stop the short-term cycle of short-term Treasury tax grabs over long-term growth. Mr. Speaker, our United Kingdom is an amazing country and has enormous potential. But we cannot take this for granted. We must accept that we are stuck in a rut, stuck in a doom loop of low economic growth, and that is a big problem. I urge the Chancellor to take these measures that I have outlined to protect our country, to get Britain growing again, and to end the cost of living crisis.
Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member gives less an economic programme and more a wish list of things that she would like to see, without any means at all of paying for them. She seems oblivious also to the things that governments are doing. She says that we should have a closer relationship with Europe. I agree. I said it in my speech. But she omits to mention that that is exactly what the government are doing. We have taken action, as the honourable lady knows, with an SPS deal to back British agriculture and on Erasmus. And it is this Labour government which is working with our EU neighbours to tackle illegal gangs and to improve our security. The honourable member calls for a big cut in taxes. But VAT at 20% as a standard rate is the rate that her party introduced when they were part of the coalition agreement. It has been ever since that they were in that coalition. We've provided £4.3 billion of support in business rates and further support for pubs and live music venues. If they want to deliver on this enormous unfunded promise, perhaps she'd like to tell us which public services the Liberal Democrats would like to cut this time. I mean, they cut enough public services when they had a chance and they were in office, but they're too scared to tell us which ones they would do today. Is it the NHS? Is it schools? Is it investment in our regional transport infrastructure? Who knows, because she won't tell us. And it is quite extraordinary. To hear the Liberal Democrats have the nerve to raise student financing. When they trebled tuition fees when they were in government and created the Plan 2 scheme. In fact, it was a Liberal Democrat Secretary of State who oversaw that policy. And the leader of the Liberal Democrats was in that cabinet meeting when they signed off that decision. So we'll take no lectures from them about how to support our young people. Now, the honourable lady says that they've set out what they would do on student finance. Is that a bit like what you did in 2010 when you set out what you were going to do on student finance? Because I remember in 2010, what were they going to do with tuition fees? That was it. They were going to abolish tuition fees. But that's not what they did, is it? What did they do? Oh, they tripled them. So why should we believe a word that the honourable lady says now on student finance? So some of us haven't forgotten that they teamed up with the Tories to cut our police, cut local government and cut our armed forces spending too. And, Mr Speaker, we are dealing with the consequences. That is why we are investing in our public services, to fix the damage that they did with the Conservatives. What have they been doing? Opposing our investment in the NHS, because that is what it means when you say you want to reverse the tax changes that we've brought in. Because the only reason we've got £29 billion more a year to spend in the NHS is because of the tax changes that we made. You can't have one without the other. The Liberal Democrats need to understand that. They're opposing our plans to build more homes. They're opposing our plans to make work pay. They opposed VAT on private schools to help the 93% of kids in our state schools. Mr Speaker, they are simply not serious.
Yuan Yang.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the Chancellor for her strong statement and in particular for her words on deepening our alliances with our European partners. This is crucial for bringing down the cost of food and for healing the economic self-harm done by the party opposites. The Bank of England has said that her cuts to energy bills will help bring inflation down to around its target from next month. Will she commit to going further and continue to shield our constituents from global price shocks?
Chancellor.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Bank of England forecast that the actions that I took in the budget last year would reduce inflation by around 0.4 percentage points and that inflation would be back close to target from April. That reflects not just taking £150 off energy bills, but also freezing prescription charges and freezing rail fares as well. Of course, the events unfolding in Iran and the Middle East have resulted over the last couple of days in gas prices going up by more than 60% and oil prices going up by more than 10%, which shows why the plan that we've had to take money off energy bills but also ensure our public finances are in a stronger place, mean that we're in a better place than we would have been 18 months ago after the mess left by the party opposite.
Sir Jeremy Hunt.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Given what the Chancellor has just said about gas prices going up nearly 50% in the last week, her budget promise to reduce household energy bills by £150 is going to ring hollow for many people. But if cost of living is the real concern, isn't the biggest mistake to increase taxes by £66 billion? That is the equivalent of nearly £2,300 per household. And if that money is needed for public services, nearly all of that, £54 billion in fact, could be got by reducing the welfare bill to 2019 levels. So is it sustainable to keep raising taxes on people in work in order to pay ever more benefits to people not in work.
Chancellor of the Exchequer.
I've got huge respect for the right honourable gentleman, but he left a massive black hole in the public finances. There hadn't been a spending review for years, and during that time, inflation had gone through the roof because the Conservatives lost control of the public finances, and so we had to find the money to properly fund our National Health Service. And it is a bit rich for the party opposite to say that we should bring welfare spending down when they presided over a huge increase in welfare spending. And on the burden of taxation, our choices ensured that it is those with the broadest shoulders that are paying higher taxes. We got rid of the non-dom tax status. We're introducing the higher value council tax, VAT on private school fees, the energy profits levy. We are ensuring that it is those with the broadest shoulders that pay the higher prices, rather than the increases in inflation and interest rates in the last Parliament, which hit working people.
Liam Byrne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The plan the Chancellor has just set out this afternoon shows that inflation is down, debt is down, bills are down, headroom is up, growth is up, and living standards up. I'd say that's testament to a plan for stability that's working. But that stability would be undermined if the Chancellor surrendered to the idea of £47 billion worth of unfunded tax cuts set out by the party opposite. So will she resist those calls, and as fiscal headroom opens up, will she look again at what can be done to drive down energy costs for small business and genuinely reform business rates, so that we are backing our wealth creators and not gambling with public finances like the party opposite?
Chancellor of the Exchequer.
I thank my right honourable friend for that question. We are backing the innovators with the reforms that we made in the budget last year to make it easier to list in London, easier to raise finance in the UK, and we have permanently changed business rates to have a lower multiplier on high street businesses and smaller businesses, particularly in the retail, hospitality and leisure sector. We did that by putting £4.3 billion into the system. All of that money would have been withdrawn by the party opposite.
John Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Undoubtedly, every government deals with different challenges, and I note that the Chancellor did not mention the challenge of COVID in the last period of government. And when I was in the Treasury, I did everything I could to support businesses with bounce-back loans, with support for our public services, and clearly that has significantly scarred the economy. But when the Chancellor last stood at the dispatch box, the economic and fiscal outlook said that growth this year will be 1.4%. It's now 1.1% and flat over the period. The big strategic choice that this Chancellor faces, as the world is different in her tenure in office, is will she grip welfare spending at a time of grave insecurity in the world? Because an open promise to raise defence spending sometime over a 5-year interval will not cut it for this country's best interest.
Right. Chancellor of the Exchequer.
The honourable gentleman mentions the work that the previous government did on COVID, and of course it was right to support people with furlough and bounce-back loans, but it wasn't right to hand money to friends and donors of the Conservative Party with COVID contracts, and we are getting the money back that they wasted. On welfare, I'll say it again, it is a little bit rich of the party opposite, especially when the Shadow Chancellor was previously the Work and Pension Secretary, to talk about welfare spending when they presided over a 113,000 increase in young people not in education, employment or training. We've already made reforms to universal credit to narrow the gap between the health element and the standard element. That will ensure that more people are out looking for work, and employment has increased since the start of last year.
Jim McMahon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Fair day's pay for a fair day's work is a fundamental part of the British contract. But for many self-employed people and those on low wages, they are paying to work because HMRC have failed to update their mileage rates for now 15 years, in which case petrol, road tax and the rest has increased significantly. So can the Chancellor do what the Conservatives failed to do and ask HMRC to update their mileage rates so that working people aren't paying to go to work.
Chancellor.
I'm very happy to arrange a meeting between my honourable friend and the responsible minister. I recognise that this is an issue and one being raised with me by the trade union Unison, amongst others. This doesn't just affect self-employed people, it also affects people in work.
All right. Sir Aldney.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Unemployment in the 3 months to December reached 5.2%, the highest rate for nearly 5 years, and youth unemployment has hit a staggering 16%. Training, hiring, retaining a skilled workforce are issues affecting businesses of all kinds across the country. The 2024 budget added over £5 billion of employment costs onto retailers, almost half of which came from the changes to employer NICs, with the cost of employing a full-time worker in a retail job rising by 10% and by 13% for those working part-time. 1 in 5 people's first job is in retail. So what steps is the government taking to tackle these unaffordably high unemployment costs for these businesses that provide entry levels for young people into our job market?
Chancellor.
What the honourable lady fails to mention is that the OBR forecasts that unemployment comes down in every year of the forecast and ends at a lower rate than it started. And it would be a little bit more plausible for the honourable lady to make these points if she didn't oppose everything we're doing to grow the economy, whether that is a third runway at Heathrow Airport or building the homes that families desperately need.
Jessica Moore.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The rail fare freeze benefits constituents who saw rail fares rise by 60% since 2010. Also, the announcement of 2 new railway stations in Newport East recently is warmly welcomed. Can I encourage the Chancellor to continue to invest in Welsh transport infrastructure?
Chancellor.
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and constituents in her Newport constituency will benefit when they commute to work or to college or to meet friends in Cardiff, Swansea, Bristol and elsewhere. But in addition to that, we are also building new railway stations and investing in new transport infrastructure in Wales with the £450 million that we announced at the spending review last year.
Dame Caroline Dowding.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. The Chancellor's words on defence just simply do not reflect the reality at a time when the world has never felt more unstable. Every corner of our armed forces is currently being asked to find cuts. People in Gosport only have to look out of their window to see all our Type 45 destroyers are currently laid up in Portsmouth Harbour. And this is the first year since the 1980s that we haven't had a ship in the Gulf at a time when the Middle East is a tinderbox. The RFA is on its knees. Defence companies are being tied up with bureaucracy, dither and delay. She's mentioned a couple of contracts, but so many of them are bogged down with dither and delay from this government. She's gaslighting the British people.
White rights.
This is a disaster. This is a disaster for our defence. It's a disaster for our armed forces. When is she going to face reality?
I am the Chancellor that has overseen the biggest uplift in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We are spending more on defence than the previous government was spending. And that is why yesterday I was able to announce a helicopter contract worth £1 billion. It's why last week a new frigate came from Rosyth. And it's why we've been able to invest in the Typhoon jets. So I won't take any lessons, frankly, from the party opposite when we are increasing defence spending and they oversaw a cut.
Jane Kirkham.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I welcome the changes to the Green Book to support investment in coastal and rural areas. Can the Chancellor confirm it will lead to infrastructure investment in transport, for example, in places like Cornwall, to support the investment being made in our industries, and particularly that £50 million into our critical mineral strategy?
Chancellor of the Exchequer.
I thank my honourable friend for that question and for the work that she's done to promote the investment opportunities in Cornwall. The Green Book means that for the first time, different parts of the country, urban, rural and coastal communities will all have their fair chance of getting the investment that they need. And this government's critical minerals strategy will have a direct impact, as it already is, on Cornwall, where the National Wealth Fund are investing in lithium and tin, as I've seen firsthand when I was there last summer.
Dave Dugan.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. A 40-minute self-aggrandising monologue saying how wonderful everything is in the economy. Does the Chancellor have any clue how her tone-deaf monologue will have landed in the real economy, where growth has been downgraded, where unemployment is soaring, and where the cost of energy has just spiked? Nothing in her statement about what she intends to do on a strategic level about when energy goes to the price it was during the height of the Ukraine crisis. Nothing in there. So will she, rather than read her pre-prepared SNP attack lines, will she guarantee that she will step in and protect bill payers if these prices endure?
Mr. Speaker, we have taken action to reduce energy bills by £150 from next month. And as I said in my speech, because of the stability that we've returned to the economy, the cuts in interest rates, the cuts in inflation, in interest rates, and the cost of government borrowing means that despite the headwinds from the Middle East and Iran, we are in a strong position to be able to respond to that.
Well,
thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, the conflict in the Middle East is, of course, a reminder of the need to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels, which set the price of our energy bills for consumers and for businesses. 80% of the time, gas sets the price for electricity. So the £117 off bills which she announced in the budget is very, very welcome, of course, but will she recommit to giving that long-term stability in our energy prices, bringing bills down for the long term by supporting investment in the generation of renewables, of nuclear, of expanding the grid and of battery storage, which will help domestic and industrial consumers at the same time?
Chancellor.
I thank the Chair of the Select Committee for that important question. And he's absolutely right. Whether it is the successful auction round 7 that we've just completed for investment in new renewable energy, or the planning reforms to make it easier to build the grid connections and also the wind farms, we're taking the action to secure our energy supplies. And, of course, the investment we put in through the spending review last year to both Sizewell C and also to small modular reactors that will be built in Wales by Rolls-Royce.
Esther Mapey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Chancellor now accept that there is a correlation between increasing national insurance contribution on employers and higher levels of unemployment? Yeah. Or does she still believe those two things are not connected in any way?
What there's definitely a correlation between is the number of years the Conservatives are in office and how much worse off working people are.
Joanna Baxter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome my right honourable friend's statement today and her commitment to growth in all parts of the United Kingdom. So I wonder if she could set out for us in a little more detail the Barnett consequentials arising from her statement, and whether she agrees with me that it's increasingly important that in May we elect a government that will spend that money wisely, and that means electing a Labour government in Holyrood led by Anna Sarwar.
Chancellor.
I thank my honourable friend for that question. In the spending review last year, we set out a record settlement for the Scottish Government as well as for the Welsh Government and the Northern Ireland Executive. And I can tell the House and my honourable friend that today, because of the decisions we're making, I can announce an additional £900 million Ardell spending and £20 million CDEL spending over the spending review between 26-27 and 2028-29 for the Scottish Government. And like my honourable friend, I very much hope that it will be Anna Sarwar and a Labour government spending that money rather than the SNP wasting it and presiding over higher NHS waiting lists.
Robert Jenrick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Chancellor is like a rogue landlord who keeps squeezing the tenant with higher and higher rents. All the while, the property is going to rack and ruin. I don't know who she's speaking to, but she needs to get out and talk to hard-working people who are hard up right now. People worried about their bills and the lack of good jobs. Not the extremists that she cozies up to for votes. Now, the next scheme that the Chancellor has, to raise taxes on working people is to hike fuel duty at the pumps. Will she cancel it? will she give some relief for care workers, for white van men, for hard-working people who get up early in the morning and drive to work, and who are the backbone of this economy?
Chancellor of the Exchequer.
May I be the first to congratulate the right honourable gentleman on his new role. I know it wasn't the first job he wanted, or indeed the second one, but a spirited intervention. I'm not sure if he shared this one with George Osborne. I could venture maybe one piece of advice. The thing about betraying your party is that you have to stop asking your old friends for advice. But perhaps, given that he called his new colleague Zia useless a couple of months ago, he needs all the friends that he can have. Now, it might have been a couple of weeks ago, but the right honourable gentleman used to be in a party that was going to get rid of the fuel duty support just 3 months after losing office. That was in the plans that we inherited, and we scrapped them. As a result, we have extended... Well, they say it's rubbish, but it was actually in their last budget. And party's budget and his party's manifesto.
Abrahams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I welcome my right honourable friend, the Chancellor's statement, and absolutely agree that this year, this is when the British public will start to feel the difference of having a Labour government. But I wonder if my right honourable friend could just expand on what she's doing to ensure that all dimensions of inequality, income, wealth, power and health are tackled, and that these benefits are felt all across the country and in all communities.
Chancellor of the Exchequer.
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and the OBR confirmed today, but at the end of this Parliament, people will be £1,000 a year better off. That compares to a fall in living standards under the previous government. And in terms of my honourable friend's constituency in Oldham and Saddleworth, I know that she has Pride in Place funding to ensure that we are investing in those places that were forgotten and left behind under 14 years of Conservative governments.
I hope the Chancellor will accept that I'm someone who's challenged successive governments over inadequate defence spending.